on a bit of a dream, if I can say that. So try and be with me on this journey. I can say that I've had a lot of fun building this. I have used Copilot for building the slides and the music. I obviously had help. Every Shiro has got lots of Shiros around her and heroes. And one of my dearest friends helped me with some of the sound, to get the sound and the synchronized and so on. So I am really holding thumbs that it all would synchronize nicely. But yeah, so let's start. Welcome. It's 13 March 2030. In the countryside of South Africa, in a small town called Thorn Bay, the chief internal auditor of New Dawn Financial Services is living. She is taking her daily stroll with her dog Jackie and enjoying nature and preparing herself for the day ahead. She's playing pick-up sticks with her dog and just having fun on the beach. And as she was going along the beach line, appreciating nature, appreciating the fresh air, and just thinking about the rest of her week and what needs to be done, she suddenly saw a little rock pool. And she thought, maybe it's time to just sit down and let Jackie catch her breath. She started playing with little rocks and she threw a rock in the pool, saw the ripples of this rock. And she was just reflecting on the differences and what has happened in the last 5 years of her life. How the world has changed and how small things started making a difference. She remembered the day in 2025 when the new internal audit standards were implemented. And she remembered how all the internal audit functions were trying to understand, make the use of practically implement it, engaging with board members, visualizing the world that internal auditors should live in, and the impact they could make. And she remembered all the discussions about be part of the organization, be a trusted advisor, be at the board table and not just invited for your 10 minutes to discuss your reports. And she was wondering if that will actually one day realize. And guess what? Now she's actually working from her little place here in South Africa, leading a team across the world of experts. And she is actually one of those people that are at the board table. New projects, she's critically part of that to make sure that the risks are properly understood, benefits are realized for the organization, and new projects are actually adopted and changing the business as it was intended. She was thinking, wow, it actually happened. No more just tick lists, no more just samples of 25 items for procurement, making sure it was signed. And none of that mundane stuff, which we just had to get through so we can finish the internal audit plan. Now she's actually part of the changing risk landscape and are at the fingertips of what's happening in the organization. Suddenly she realized time is running away with her and it's time to get to a 9 o'clock meeting. She takes Jackie and says, come, it's time to go home. Mommy needs to start work. And on the way back to her house, she was still in a reflective mode, thinking about how did this actually all happen in such a short space of 5 years? I mean, literally 5 years ago, she was still preparing long slide decks with detailed reports, still arguing with clients about high risk findings, medium risk findings, and all of those things. How did she actually get here? Then she suddenly remembered the day at the water cooler in the office when she met Kobus, at that time, head of internal audit. And he actually noted her and started talking to her and asked her how, what is she busy with? Sure, and it was very daunting, but she actually grabbed the moment, took her courage out of her pocket and talked to Kobus. I mean, he's always been that senior guy that you don't get a chance to talk to. He's too busy. He's always in some meetings. And she actually started telling him that she started studying cyber security and data analytics because there's so much free training available nowadays. And she just wanted to see if there's not different ways of doing things. And to her surprise, he actually listened to her and he said, tell me more. And she then started telling him about technology, how we can do things faster, different, etc. Different ways of actually doing working papers, testing populations of data, etc. He had to rush, but he actually said to her, please come to my office a bit later. I want to discuss this further with you. That led to actually a project internally in the company, and they were prepared to invest some money, some tools, training for the internal audit team. And yeah, Kobus is sitting today in Texas, closer to his family, semi-retired, and she's the chief internal auditor of New Dawn Financial Services. She opened the door and prepared herself for a day. And the first thing on the agenda was a team meeting, where she was talking to her team about trends and changes in technology, because these are the trends and changes that they need to take into account for their annual planning, which is not annual anymore. It is actually now an ongoing process of refreshing and revisiting the internal audit plan as the landscape and the risk landscape is changing. So she started a meeting with a team that is spread around the globe and welcoming them all. And then she started with some of the prepared material that she's been part of in researching, but then also discussing it with the colleagues in the organization to see how that will be applicable. So one of the major trends that has continuously to grow is cloud governance. Now, most of the organizations today has got some sort of cloud adoption strategy. And you also find that some clients have got multi-clouds. So cloud governance is very important and is an increasing trend across all our clients that we visit and that we work with. And it's important for internal auditors to then make sure that the risks are appropriately managed, particularly in terms of contracts and redefined script, making sure service level agreements are appropriate, and also the risks that you are exposing yourself when you are contracting with third parties, in terms of third party resilience. So some of the things that internal auditors should definitely look at is how you optimize the resources in the cloud, but then also the effectiveness of the controls around the cloud systems and cloud networks. One of the other trends that is just increasingly is generative artificial intelligence, AI. We've heard earlier from both of our speakers on how that is changing the world and impacting each one of us. I've earlier told you about how I used it. So the first few slides with the music is what I've done on Copilot with my friend. This I didn't do through Copilot. This was my own work. Just for the people and the interest of ethics and transparency. So generative AI is it's getting more pervasive everywhere, and it's got amazing benefits, but at the same time, it needs to be used responsibly. I don't want to just be the gloom and loom around risks around it, but it really warrants responsive use and responsive in the way that you interpret the results you get. And there's a very close link also to data governance later, which I'll also touch on, because depending on the data and the information AI is using, it could actually skew the results in a certain area that could lead to bias or inappropriate conclusions or recommendations. Now, again, internal auditors can play a very important role there, and that is to actually audit the AI that is being used. And for some of our more experienced internal auditors, we will remember the black box approach, and that is how we audited years ago. But that is one of the techniques internal auditors will use to make sure that AI is actually giving the appropriate answers that one was expecting. AI governance is something that organizations all need to start adopting if they haven't yet, around the responsible use of artificial intelligence. Interesting also is that more and more we see what is termed shadow IT, where actually business or operational areas are utilizing artificial intelligence or tools that is not necessarily approved and mandated by the official IT function. And in that way, it actually weakens the backbone of an organization. And you could unintentionally actually introduce harmful software or even open up your backbone of your system for hacking and so forth. Cybersecurity, it will be remiss of me not to talk about cybersecurity. Even in 2030, it hasn't gone away. So it's something that we just all need to get under our belt and not be scared of anymore. It needs to be continuously monitored. The cyber attacks is getting more severe and more brutal, and the damages are just unbelievable. I've read an article over the weekend where they were talking about the biggest cyber attack in cryptocurrency. And the numbers were just like, I mean, there's too many noughts for me even to say the words. It was really just mind-boggling on how much money is being lost and damages to business. So continuous cyber health checks and to then really look at defending, detecting and responding, and then definitely the resilience of the organization to respond to items like that. One other thing that I hope they've resolved by the year 2030 is women in menopause. You don't have all of this. Heat waves. Apologies, but I think there's a lot of babies here that feel my pain. So, monkey, I appreciate it. I really hope by 2030 there's like a button we can click. The critical third parties. Over the last few years, I've seen an increase in organizations really looking hard at their third parties and doing third party risk assessments. We often called by clients to say, come and help us to do a risk assessment on specific third parties and the criticality of third parties. And then obviously also the fourth parties, because You think you've outsourced something to company X, but company X again outsources it to company Y, and before you know it, you don't know who's doing what for you. So that is a trend that is consistent, and it will continue for a long time, particularly as organizations are sharpening on what they really deliver, getting more cost effective, and competition is increasing. So certainly ongoing monitoring of your third parties and evaluating that those third parties has got adequate resilience in place. And that's the logical next one, is about resilience. And resilience is a word that we, I think, often overuse because we talk about our own resilience, but we also talk about resilience in terms of organizations. I know in the banking sector and FS sector, resilience is huge. It's on the tip of everybody's tongue, how resilient are we, can we continue client service, etc. But it's as vital for any organization in terms of how long can they actually be without certain systems and connectivity. I know in our own company, if emails are down, I know of a person that gets a lot of phone calls who is keeping an eye over our internal IT when it's like, we can't email, we can't email, we can't email. So that resilience and backup planning is vital, and it's even more vital as we are moving into more connected world with more tools and third parties, fourth parties, etc. Programs, transformation programs. I'm not sure how many of you have recently been in discussions around the technology debt that is facing organizations. And the debt that organizations are facing is getting increasingly because technology is changing so quickly. You've just implemented a new system, and 3 months, 6 months from now, there's a new version, there's an upgrade, etc. Also, that forces organizations to relook at technology in the sense of how they can get more improved technology for quicker, faster, more cost-effective solutions. And sadly to say, still in 2025, a lot of organizations struggle to get the benefits they are looking to get out of technology implementations. And internal audit can play a fundamental role in the success of that simply by being involved in the project, having continuous monitoring on the risks of the program, looking at the functionality that is being implemented, and picking up on the point that Celestine made earlier. Internal auditors are in that absolute unique space where you know the whole organization. Now, often when organizations implement a system, they maybe implement a new procurement system, but they don't think that there's new legislation that's impacting procurement because they're looking at procurement. But as an internal auditor, because you know the entire landscape, you're in a unique position to say, remember to talk to so-and-so because there's regulatory impact. Or remember to talk to your company secretary around delegations of authority, that you brought the right controls in place. So this is an area where I would really encourage all internal auditors to get involved in, because that is how you make a difference, not only for today, but also the future of your organization, and helping that the organization will get the benefits they are looking to achieve with those projects. Data governance. In my years of experience, I've noted often that new implementations are going really wrong or major disruption post-implementation because of poor data. And it could be as simple as you've got the wrong banking details for a vendor. And then you think you're paying company X, but actually you're not because the data got mixed up. And in the world where we are more technology driven, more tools, more artificial intelligence, it's data hungry. It needs accurate information. And if your data is not accurate, it is biased, it is incomplete, whatever you do with that will be skewed. So it's either your recommendations you get out of some of these tools or models that you are using or just simply your management reporting is poor. But with the increased connected world we're living in, data governance, data standards, how do you, where do you keep your master? That is interesting conversations in organizations, which often I think should be a simple answer to. But that is certainly needs to get more prominence from internal auditors on helping organizations to then be able to be future ready and adopt the new technologies that they want to adopt for meeting their strategic objectives. Then the one that was very interesting for me when I did this research was the cross-application segregation of duties. And I unfortunately saw the impact of the lack of having that in a fraud case that I I wasn't involved in auditing it, but I saw the report around the lessons learned afterwards. And it was literally because, like most companies are doing, is to be silo-driven when they're looking at segregation of duties in a specific system. So they will actually say for procurement, this is what needs to be segregated. The purchase or a request or approval or whatever it is, they do not see it right through the business process up to it ends in the financial statements or into the bank accounts. And you could then find that the same person that could upfront approve something actually has the same level of access in different applications. And then where you thought there were adequate segregation of duties, they weren't. And that is becoming more and more prevalent in a lot of organizations. And it's going to be quite a challenge, I think, for some organizations to really start looking at the entire business process and then appropriately implement segregation of duties, obviously linking to delegation of authorities as well. So I would say get ahead of this one and start having those conversations. That brings me to the end of the trends I wanted to share with you today. And I just want to go back to 2030, or I want to go forward to 2030 to say that you each have got the opportunity to influence a lot of people around you, your families, your friends, your colleagues, your organizations where you play a pivotal role in. And it's in your hands to decide how your 2030 will look like. This lady's 2030 was the way we described it earlier on. But it's up to you to decide what you're going to do to decide how your 2030 will look like. And it starts with small steps. And it starts with being courageous and doing a few small things. And you can then have your own 2030. Thank you.